So if you are thinking about selling your home in 2025, we're going to look back at 2024 and a couple of previous years. So you don't just want to sell your home when there's the most buyer activity in the market. That's only half of the picture. You want to sell your home.
And we are back. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with realty expert John Brodine. How are you?
What's up, Dale? I'm good. How about you?
Good to see you. I don't get a chance to see you guys as much anymore, so it's always fun chatting with you. I'm usually a couple times a year here. You know, we were just talking before the show about catching up on some of the latest movies we've seen.
I know. I always look forward to talking to you about some TV shows and movies and stuff.
I love nerding out. I guess real quick, you know, they just announced the Oscar nominees. The award ceremonies aren't for a while still. Do you have like a go-to one or two favorite movies of 2024? What that would be your pick for a best picture? Just one or two that come to mind?
I don't know if it's the type of movie that would win best picture, but I'm a big fan of the what's it called? The one was Fury Road, Mad Max.
Oh yeah,
The new Mad Max movie I really enjoyed.
That ranked high on my list. I think it was number 2.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that movie, The Substance, does pretty well.
Oh yeah,
we were talking about that a little bit. Not exactly my cup of tea, but it was an interesting movie and pretty well done and stuff. I don't know if I thought that the new Mad Max was better than the Mad Max Fury Road. Personally, I thought like the character development was a little bit better in this one.
Yeah, they take you on a journey.
It's always like stuff that's a little bit more unique and not sequels of things that win the Oscars. So
yeah, I know they like to go with the art house prestige movies, the dramas.
Yeah.
Though every once in a while they surprise us.
You know, I can't think of. I'd have to think more to movies that came out this year that I've really enjoyed, because I'm not sure if this has been that great of a year for movies. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, some years some years I get surprised. I know we did our movie show here. We did our top 10 movies of the year, and you know,
what was your number one?
Well, Mad Max was my number 2, but for whatever reason, I actually saw it twice in the theater. My number 1 was actually Twisters. For whatever reason, it hit all the right notes.
That's good, and I can't bring myself to watch it.
The first time I was like super judgy on it. I'm like, oh, how could this?
That's how I was thinking.
You know, I was like, oh, you know, they don't bring back any of the original cast. How could it be worthy of the Twisters name? But I think by like the last third, I was also found myself reeled in. I'm like, waited a few weeks. I'm like, I need to see this with a fresh set of eyes. And eventually the whole thing won me over, and thinking hard about it.
I almost watched that on a plane, actually. So I can't remember when this year, but I ended up watching something else instead. Now I wish I would have watched that one.
Oh, gosh. You know, it's always interesting with so many of the best movies hitting throughout the year. But, you know, what is also interesting is when is the best time to list your home throughout the year? So that's
great transition.
Yeah, great. Big topic of the day for the show.
Yeah. So if you are thinking about selling your home in 2025, we're going to look back at 2024 and a couple of previous years. So you don't just want to sell your home when there's the most buyer activity in the market. That's only half of the picture. You want to sell your home when the buyer activity is at its highest in relation to the number of listings that are on the market. You want the time where demand is at its highest and competition is at its lowest relatively. That's how we determine what the strongest seller's market of the year is. You're going to have the best results if you sell when it's the hottest seller's market of the year. And usually it's springtime when this occurs. You'll see kind of a ramping up. So for example, in 2024, the hottest sellers, and so sometimes the most buyer activity and the hottest sellers market of the year happen in the same month, which is how it was in 2024. But other years, it's happened where the most buyer activity and the hottest sellers market are 2 different months, because maybe there's a lot of inventory relatively when the highest activity is occurring. Does that make sense?
I was just going to ask, has there ever been like an outlier year where all of a sudden, you know, well, instead of the springtime, this, you know, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, we had this one crazy winter month where it really took off?
Yeah, not winter. There have been some years where that's been unusually good during a winter month, but like for example, in 2024, April was the busiest month for both hottest sellers market and the most buyer activity. Months of inventory is the most important statistic to look at here. That's where we take the total number of active listings on the market at the time divided by how many homes went pending during that month. So anything under like 5 to 6 is a seller's market. That's low inventory in proportion to the number of homes that are selling. 6 months of inventory, 5 to 6 months of inventory is a pretty balanced market where neither buyers nor sellers have a huge advantage.
Keep it equal about.
Yeah, yeah. And then 6+ months of inventory, as you can imagine, is a buyer's market where there's a lot of inventory in proportion to the number of buyers that are out there buying homes. That's when homes will sit on the market for a lot longer, take bigger discounts. Prices aren't growing in that situation. And if it's extreme, prices can be dropping.
It's kind of like the equivalent of like a liquidation sale.
Yeah. That's very good analogy. So in April of 2024, the hottest sellers market of the year, there were 138 listings on the market at the end of the month. I believe that's at the end of the month. And there were 60 homes went pending during that month. So 138 divided by 60 is 2.3. That means there were 2.3 months of inventory. Remember, anything up to about 5-6 months of inventory is a seller's market. So that's a very strong seller's market. One thing that was kind of unusual this past year is July was actually the second hottest seller's market of the year, which is kind of strange. It's kind of when we saw interest rates begin dropping.
So you said there was a second highest, July? Or?
Yeah, July was the second highest, which is a little bit unusual. That's a little bit later in the summer for it to be that hot.
Usually it's like temps are too hot for people to move? Or
not necessarily. That's a good question. It's more because more homes have come on the market, so there's more inventory that would stop those summer months. The summer months are usually pretty high activity, but usually it's the spring months when inventory hasn't quite caught up to the level of activity yet. But I think the reason that this month was, or this year was a little bit unusual in 2024 was July was the first month that we saw sub-6 interest rates on mortgages. And that's when a lot of activity happened as well. And inventory really wasn't too high. It was actually 136 listings on the market at that time of the year. But the market really began ramping up as early as February. If you remember, we didn't have that was in 2024. We didn't have a very harsh winter last year. Weather was pretty nice. So that impacts things as well. Interest rates, weather, different conditions outside of just the typical seasonal housing market that we experience. So things started kind of ramping up February, March, then April was the hottest month of the year for sellers. Now, if we look back to 2023, it was May. So May, it seemed like the spring rush happened a bit later.
Trying to remember if we had like a later thaw, maybe. I
think we kind of did.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering right, but I'm not sure either. So in 2023, there were 2.25 months of inventory on the market in May, and that was the hottest sellers market of the year. The market really didn't start heating up until April last spring compared to like February, or not last spring, but 2023 compared to like in February in 2024. So you can see it's a little bit later of a spring rush. And then the second hottest sellers market of the year was June by a narrow margin.
So when you're crunching all these numbers, comparing them year versus year, and when you're getting all the latest data as it's coming in and you're getting your formulas updated, is there a little bit of a real estate nut in you where you're like, well, look how the numbers are going this year versus last year, and you just find yourself just wrapped up into it?
I do enjoy that part of the job, kind of making sense of what's happening. If I think if you don't do this, you're not as tuned into the market. I think it helps me be better at my job and helps me better serve my clients and educate them on what to expect and how to make the best decisions. And I like doing my little detective work and getting to the bottom of things. So we just talked about 2023. So 2024 was April, was the hottest sellers market of the year. 2023 it was May, a little bit later spring rush. 2024 was an unusually early spring rush. In 2022, the hottest sellers market of the year was April once again, with this was very low, 1.88 months of inventory. This was the year that rates started rising. Spring rush kind of started beginning in March that year, which is a little bit more typical. And the second hottest sellers market of the year was in May. So hottest sellers market of the year in 2022 was April. So that's happened twice out of the last 3 years. Second, and then it's happened once in May so far from what we've covered. Then we look back at 2021. It was April once again, 1.82 months of inventory in April of 2021.
And And that time frame, you're still kind of dealing with kind of coming off that pandemic or kind of like the last major swing of it. And so that had to throw a big wrench in your numbers.
Yeah, that was a crazy year in real estate. And then listen to this. This is gonna make people sad. 2.875 was the interest rate in April of 2021.
Oh wow, that's a little bit more.
yeah. Compare that with the busiest month of 2024. The interest rate was 7.375. Right now we're in the mid sixes. So back then, 1.82 months of inventory, super low. The second busiest month of the year in 2021 was June. Usually, we see out of the last 4 years, 3 of the last 4 years, the busiest month of the year has been April. Mm-hmm. It kind of differs a little bit of when that busy season starts, but I'd say like if you were to look probably back 10 years or something, on average, I'd say the busy season begins ramping up in March. So to answer the original question, what month of the year should you list your home to try to sell it for the max price and have the most perfect market conditions to get top dollar? I would say listing your home in mid-March to early April is going to be your very best bet for getting the optimal conditions.
People are probably just looking forward to the warm summer ahead and looking forward to getting out and finding a new place or new future home, and they're all tired of being cooped up for the winter, and they're like, all right, let's go buy a house.
Yep. and as you can see, the buyers come out in big numbers before the listing inventory starts to pile up. That's in your favor as a seller because you want less competition amongst listings and a ton of buyers out there looking for homes to buy. That's your optimal conditions for buying or for selling your home for top dollar. You might want to adjust your strategy if you also need to buy a home at the same time, because you're going to run into the same exact problem if you're trying to buy a home at the exact same time. So that's something that you can talk about with me, and we can come up with a strategy for it. I actually was just doing this with someone last week, because if you're planning to list your home in early April or something and you're planning to start shopping at that same exact time, it's going to be extremely competitive. And if you have to use a home sale contingency, it's going to be hard to compete just because everyone is just fighting over the few listings that there are, and there's so many buyers out there. So you can adjust your strategy if you have to do both at the same time, because if you buy during the most expensive time of the year, you sell at the most expensive time of the year, but you almost also buy at the most expensive time of the year. It ends up being somewhat of a wash.
I was going to say kind of equaling out maybe, or
but if you're able to buy without a home sale contingency, you could start looking earlier in the year and get your home, like your next home, locked up and get under contract earlier in the year when there's a little bit less competition, than sell your home at the peak when it's most going to be getting the most money out of your house that you have to sell.
I know you've probably brought it up on a past show. My memory can
I've probably brought everything up in a past show.
But my memory escapes me a little bit of times because there's just so much to take in. Home sale contingency. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, great question. So that's when you need to sell your current home in order to qualify for the loan to purchase your next home. So your pre-approval essentially is subject to you selling your home. The bank says, okay, well, if you sell your home, you'll be able to afford the payment on this new home. But if you have both payments at the same time, you're not going to be able to cover it according to us. So we're not going to approve you unless you can sell your home first. So what happens then is people will list their home, get it under contract, find a new home to buy, close on them both at the same day. So their loan gets paid off and they close on their house that they need to sell like 20 minutes before they sign to get the keys for their new home that they're moving into.
I like my analogies. This is kind of reminding me of the real estate version of a credit check, but like very specific factors that work for homes versus other types of loans.
Yep, exactly. It's like they want to make sure the way that the bank pre-approves you is they look at what is the house payment that you're aiming for. Is that going to be less than 45%, usually 45% of your monthly income before taxes minus any debts. So you take your monthly income before taxes, you subtract any debt payments that you have, you take 45% of that. That's what the bank wants to see, that at a very minimum to make sure you can afford a home. Well, the way it works when you already own a home is they're going to take your house. That's going to be a debt payment. So that's going to drastically reduce the amount of income you have to play with to qualify for your next one. So for a majority of people, they can't qualify for 2 houses at once, but they can qualify for the type of home that they want to buy if they didn't have their current house payment. Does that make sense?
Yep. Oh yeah. I love how you break it down. I learn a ton of stuff whenever I come in here, and oh gosh, it kind of reminds me of a lot of stuff to bring up for our next show here.
Yeah.
Is there anything we missed on when is the best time to list your home in 2025?
I don't think so. If you've got a unique situation where you might need some additional advice, reach out to me, 701-213-5428. That's my cell phone number. I'd be happy to give you some specific advice to your situation. But yeah, if you're thinking about selling in the springtime, you know what month you want to target for when you want it on the market by. It's a great time to reach out to me now so I can help you decide on any of those last minute projects you're considering doing, tell you if it's going to be worth it or not. That'll be really valuable to you and help you get even more money out of your sale.
Well, beware the Ides of March, because that is the time to list your home.
It is. Yep.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome. A big learning session.
Yes. Good to see you too, Dale.
All right. That wraps up our Wednesday edition of the Berkshire Hathaway podcast. Many thanks again to John Brodine for joining us today. Many thanks to producer Paul. And we will be back with the next Berkshire Hathaway podcast this Friday at 10 o'clock. Until then, have a great day, and we'll see you Friday.